to fix the rust bucket. Continuing on with our repairs, we've already replaced the inner rocker on the truck. We just in the last video finished doing the A-pillar, the hinge part of the A-pillar. The only thing we have left now to do is the outer rocker, which we're going to complete in this video. There are a few things that we have to do before we can actually put the rocker on and get our correct mark out locations. So let's get right into it and get started with that. All right, so we have the rocker in place on the post and on the back side of the cab. Back here, we're okay, we're good. All of the metal's been removed, the old rusted out metal, and it's clean, ready to go for the cut. The issue we have right now is up here in the front, and I'll show you. So underneath of here, we have the A-pillar, outside part of the A-pillar that we replaced. And down here, the pillar still exists, along with the old rocker piece. We're not gonna be able to get the new rocker in the correct position with that there. So to cut off as much metal as I can without overcutting this, I am going to lay the new rocker back on, give myself an idea of where it's going to sit. Now back on the back side, it's even with the lip. Down here, we're half an inch, quarter inch off. So with the rocker just temporarily in place, pushed up as high as we can get it on the old piece, just going to go ahead and make a mark. Just a rough idea, nothing fancy. We'll fine tune this cut after we remove the metal that's in the way here. Now again, I'm just going to go just below this line to not overcut it and make that final cut afterwards. So with that final cut on the back side here, it's close, but it's not perfect. It's not ready yet. We have the lip here, where the door seal goes. The lip is pretty close. Up here on the pillar, it's close. It's close everywhere. This body line right here along the bottom doesn't match up with the body line of the original truck yet. So there's a lot of fine tuning, tweaking, whatever you want to call it, to get this lined up, or at least where I want it to be, where I'm comfortable installing it permanently on the truck. Repop metal is never going to be perfect to the manufacturer's original parts, so there's always going to be that fine tuning and hammering and moving around. So I'm not going to bore you with all that noise because you won't be able to hear me or anything else. I've done everything I can to get this in line the best I can with the truck without having it tack welded and manipulating some of the metal back in line with the body of the truck. So before we can go any farther with that, we'll start throwing some tack welds in it, and then there's only 2 spots that I really have to bend the metal, move it into place to get it lined up. But before we do that, I've got to get the paint removed. On the front side here, we have to drill some holes out for the spot welds and along the bottom. And also there's one more thing I want to point out right here, and that's back here in this corner. And let me show you. I'm not going to say I made a mistake in the corner, but I made it a little more difficult for myself on the corner. And that is because I cut this at a 90-degree angle. And what I should have done was I should have taken and made it a radius type cut on here, something similar, you know, something like that. Make a radius cut. And the reason for that is because when you get into this corner here on this 90, as you throw in your heat and your welds, it could potentially pull the metal back away from here, causing just a bigger gap. It's not a huge deal to me right now. It's not an outside panel. You know, we're not going to be pulling in. You're not going to see the warpage if there was any. We'll get that tacked in the corner first to try and hold it the best we can, and then we'll fill it in from that point. So with the truck paint removed off the body and prepped ready for the welding, now we can get to the outer rocker and get that prepped for welding. Now on the rocker, all the welding is going to be done on the outside across the front here, obviously these joints, and on the bottom, all the welding will be done from the outside of it. The only welding on the inside we're going to do is right here along this lip in the door frame. We're going to weld from the back side onto here. And so in order to do that, we're going to mark out these spot weld locations along here and then just clean off those paint spots. Just real quick, we'll clamp it down. Nothing too fancy on this. And mark out those weld points. Up front here, in the back side, you can see there was approximately 6 spot welds. So we're just going to go ahead and send 6 more spot welds back on it. We'll drill out the rocker since the backside is solid already. And with those marked, we gotta go underneath and mark the underside. Now for the underside of the rocker, there's a spot weld in between every single one of these crimp marks along it from one end all the way to the other side. So we're just going to go ahead and mark right here in the middle. My pen's dying, I gotta get a new one. But we'll mark in the middle of every single crimp point, and then we'll drill these out to weld through here up to the inside of the bottom of the inside rocker. So all the holes drilled out and cleaned up, all the burrs, everything's ready to go. We're ready to get it installed back on the truck. Get it lined back up. And we'll clamp it in. So that's as far as I'm going to go with the installation of the rocker. I'm not going to do any body filler or any kind of smoothing stuff on here. I'm just going to spray it with primer, get it a coat of red on it to kind of blend in with the truck. Truck has a lot more damage that needs to be addressed later on. This was just to get the passenger door to reclose, and that way we could put it on the road and start using it. So we'll get to the primer. We're going to be using just RUST-OLEUM 2-in-1 primer. The red paint, same thing. It's just a RUST-OLEUM red paint. Once we get it painted, I've got the seam sealer that we're going to be using. I've never used this stuff before, so we'll see how it does. Get the focus there. But before we can get the seam sealer on there and paint this painted, we're going to go ahead and just block off the interior a little bit so we can spray all this down. So we're going to go ahead, primer's dried up. We're going to go ahead and get the red back on there and then get all the cardboard and everything out of the way so we can put the seam seal in. All right, so we're gonna give that little light coat some time to dry, and then we'll put the final coat on there. All right, so again, that's the seam sealer we're going to be using to seal this up with. And on the back side here in the instructions, the only thing it says is it has to be on a painted surface. So there is some seam sealers that you can put on bare metal. This one does have to go on a painted surface, but it's kind of DIY user friendly. Just a normal caulk gun will work. Also, you got to scratch up, which we've already done, scuff up the paint, I guess, you know, to get it to have somewhere to grip. And then it says you have to allow it to dry for 30 minutes minimum to repaint it. I've cut the tip pretty far down. I'm not trying to replicate what the manufacturer did, but I am trying to get a wide enough bead and a thick enough bead inside there to seal this up. So what I figured I'd do is take a pair of pliers and I'm gonna mash the applicator tip the best I can to try and flatten it out. So I have it squished down a little bit narrow. I think that'll be okay for what we're doing. I'll leave a link in the description of what this, you know, this type of stuff. But like I said, I've never used it, so I don't know how it's going to hold up. I'm going to put a pretty thick bead on there. Well, I'm also forcing this against that joint to try and force it into the joint as well. All right, so there's some air bubbles in it, which I don't like, because then that's going to leave an opening. Fix that real quick. It's fairly easy to apply. Let's just hope it holds up. Where that light is coming through here, the seam seal from the manufacturer was on the inside of these two, the inside of the rocker and the A-pillar and the firewall. So the firewall being right here, and then the rocker and A-pillar being right here. This was all sealed from the inside. So I'm going to seal it up from the inside first. Then I'm going to come out here, see what it looks like on the outside, and we'll determine whether I'm going to put some on the outside or not. I don't want anything obviously getting through here. It's right inside the wheel well, and it would go inside the cab under the carpet, causing a big problem. You can see it didn't really come out too far out here on the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and seal it up on the outside as well, but let me show you the inside, what it looks like. The seam runs along the A-pillar and then down to the floor pan up against the rocker. So here's the old manufacturer seam, the part that I didn't have to remove. We did remove all that, so we resealed that right there. So I'm just going to stick some on the outside just to be on the safe side. I don't want mold and water inside the truck. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this video and wrap it up for this corner of the repair from that accident that this truck was involved in. The A-pillars been replaced. The inner and outer rocker had to get replaced because they were just so rusted out. There was nowhere to reattach them to. I appreciate you guys watching. If you like this kind of content, click right here, subscribe to the channel. The headlights are in. Headlight mounting bracket that was broken from the accident is in. So we're going to be installing all of those. In the meantime, check out some other videos.